Cave of Wonders. I am Lord Callous of the Dreamwalkers. Today in the Mangold Report, let's talk about the new Boba Fett film. Was it canceled? Did it ever really exist? Or is it still on schedule to begin filming in 2020? This is the Mangold Report. I am Lord Callous. And with rumors circulating about the cancellation of, or postponement of, or was it ever even a thing? Is it still going to shoot in 2020? This new Fett film. So I have to ask myself the question, does this news have anything to do with the new live show being created by John Favreau for Disney's new streaming service with a $100 million budget? So I guess before we can answer that question, we sort of have to know whether or not this is intended to be, or was intended to be, whichever one it is or was it intended to be a prequel or a sequel? You see, in Disney's canon, Fett is still being slowly digested in the belly of the Sarlacc on Tatooine. So if they go the prequel route, Disney has to ask themselves a few questions. They have to ask themselves, will this flop as did Solo? Are we going to be faced with an angry fandom spewing the question, or statements rather, we didn't ask for this? This is a business, this is a corporation, so they have to ask themselves these questions. No more prequels, right? No more prequels. This is the question they have to ask themselves. And if they do choose to move forward with Fett in the prequel setting, they have to figure out where it fits. What is the timeline? You see, because Disney is all about continuity. Ever since the acquisition, it's the reason for the EU cancellation, right? Everything in the EU being non-canon, and them slowly bringing that into the timelines, or whatever they're picking and choosing from the EU to bring into the timeline. But Disney is all about continuity, from the comics to the movies, the TV shows. Everything has to fit perfectly within the timeline. So if we're looking at this Fett film being set in the prequel time period, we have the battle before the Battle of Yavin to work with, BBY, and from A New Hope up until Return of the Jedi, if we're working with the prequel setting. So then we have to look back and see when was the last time that we saw Boba Fett? And that was episode 20, season 4 of the Clone Wars series. That was the last time that, I believe that was the last time that we saw Fett. Okay? So if we're talking the BBY time period, we have season 4, episode 20 up until A New Hope. Okay? So we have that time period to work with. But wait a minute. Disney just announced, or not just announced, but has announced that they'll be adding 12 more episodes to the Clone Wars series. Okay, so now we've got a little bit of a tricky situation that we're working with, because we don't know what the plan is with these 12 episodes. is it possible that Fett will return in any of these 12 episodes? So that may cause pause for the film if we're talking about that BBY setting. So let's fast forward. Let's leave that BBY setting alone, and let's look at the original trilogy. Right? We'll have to work with that original trilogy timeline. So that means that we would have A New Hope up until Fett is swallowed by the Sarlacc on Tatooine. That is a time frame that this movie could work with. But let's fast forward. Let's say that we don't go with a prequel setting. Let's go with a sequel setting. That gives us the Sarlacc pit from Return of the Jedi up until the current events, Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, Episode 9. So we know that Boba Fett was 10 years old the first time that we saw him in a Clone Wars, right? Or in the Clone Wars. He was 10 years old. All right, we know that when he was swallowed by the Sarlacc, he was 36 years old. The events in this sequel trilogy now taking place 30 years after Return of the Jedi. So that would make Fett 66 years old. Think about that. 66 years old. So if we're going to work with the sequel setting, do we want to see Fett in the current sequel setting, The Force Awakens Last Jedi Episode 9, at 66 years old? Now that's not to say that he couldn't be amazing, because if you guys follow the EU, you know that Boba Fett did actually exist during that 30-year time frame. I don't remember if it was the New Jedi Order time period or Fate of the Jedi time period, but I can't recall off the top of my head. But I remember, because I've read these books, him, he has a daughter. He was reunited with his daughter. He actually became Mandalore. So on and so forth. So he was badass at almost 70 years old in the EU. But does that mean that this current situation would make him such? I don't know. So if we're going to leave the sequels, the current sequel trilogy, out of this time frame, that gives us the Sarlacc time frame to work with, right? Anything that's happening between the time that he climbs up out of that Sarlacc pit until whenever it is that they choose to make the movie. But the problem with that is now we have Favreau's new live show taking place 7 years after Return of the Jedi, which would be the optimal time to work with the timeline for this new Fett film. But the new Favreau live show is also going to be about the Mandos. You see where this is going. So this is what makes me ask that question. Was this new live show the reason for the pause, if in fact it has been paused, or if it ever existed? Is this new live show responsible for that? Because the Mandos are an important part, a very important part of the Star Wars lore. Very important part. And if we're going to see this done, we want to see it done right. So them bothering to make a Fett film, if they associate him at all with the Mandalorians, we want to see that done right. And Favreau is a great director, so I think that he will do justice to this new live show. So why not let Favreau test the grounds, see how he fleshes out this time period, and then move on with the Fett film afterwards? Was it just a sound business move on Disney's part? And I'd have to say whichever it is, whichever it was, I think that postponing it, canceling it, it never having existed, or us moving forward with it in after 2020 is probably a better business move for Disney. You guys let me know what you think. Thank you for taking the time. This has been the Mangold Report. Hey, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. Please let me know in the comments, what are your Fett theories? And while you're there, like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. And as always, thank you for taking your time to spend with the Dreamwalker.